to begin.
Hey everybody, welcome to the CISO series video chat. My name is David Spark. Let me give you the lowdown. What's happening today? All right, this is what's happening. We are talking hacking data intelligence, an hour of critical thinking on how to turn insights into actionable protection of data. All right, so let's actually make the connection here on today's discussion. Our guests for our discussion are Jonna Till-Johnson, CEO of Nemertes Research, and also Chris Strand, Chief Compliance Officer for Insights. Insights, they're our sponsor today. Thank you so much, Insights, for sponsoring this episode. Now, for those who've been here many, many times before, you know all this stuff. Just bear with me as I burn through this. 5 different ways you can participate. 1, the chat room, which I always say, that's half the show. 2, bad ideas, get them in. Our topic is hacking data intelligence or hacking threat intelligence. Anyways, we need bad ideas around that. Give me a lot of them. Join us on video. Not many of you are choosing to do this, but I want you to join us on video. Just type in, bring me on. If you got a question or a comment, do that. Also, you could just type in a question. That's perfectly fine. Or you can ask it live on video. Or you can type in the question and say, bring me on video. Do both. And also you can vote for your favorite question as well. So today's schedule, get your questions in, submit your bad ideas. 20 minutes past the hour, the poll goes live. You vote for your favorite bad idea. Then we play the Department of Yes. Immediately after that, we play we play What's Worse. Normally we have the winner from last week play What's Worse, but that winner is actually on an airplane right now. So Eli Migdal, a past winner from before, is going to be giving us two of the bad ideas for the What's Worse showdown. Then we'll go back to voting for your favorite questions, then final advice, and then the icebreaker. And if you've never been a part of that, that's at the tail end of the hour, and our link at the bottom of the screen will change to the icebreaker link. You'll click on that, and we have one-on-one meetings, kind of like cybersecurity speed dating. Next week, hacking high-profile accounts, designing extra layers of protection around more valuable users. The link at the bottom of the screen. You can click it at any time. It will open another window. It will not take you out of this video chat, and you can register for that as well. And then, as I mentioned, stick around for the icebreaker. All right, let's actually get into our discussion. Enough of the preamble. I want to actually get into our conversation on hacking data intelligence. And okay, this is bad ideas are already coming in. Love it. All right. Let's talk really like kind of baseline right now. I'm going to start with you, Chris, on this is what is the threat intelligence we're actually collecting?
Good question. So really it's not a matter of what, it's what you should be collecting. And that will really context comes to mind when you think of what you should be collecting. Usually it has to do with your business, but more importantly, you want to make sure that you're collecting all of the intelligence that you should be collecting. So when you think of intelligence, people often think of just threat intelligence, but there's more than that, right? There's the clear, deep, and dark web. There's 3 layers of intelligence. So when you think of collecting intelligence, you definitely want to see what your business actually needs, see what you need, and actually make sure that you're collecting that intelligence across all the different layers. Make sure that you're getting at least enough so that you can build some context.
Okay. And data collection is the very first step. And by the way, the reason we have Jonna on, I want to sort of clarify, is Jonna's been doing a ton of research on this topic. So it's like top of mind right now. What have you, from the research you've done right now, Jonna, what have you seen in terms of the levels of data collection that are being collected now? And by the way, has it changed much over the past few years?
Well, I think one of the big things, I actually want to go back to the previous question and weigh in on that, because I think it's important to kind of characterize what data you're collecting. So there's strategic threats, which I would argue, being a strategist myself, that's the most important thing you can be looking at. For example, I've been talking about the dangers posed by, the ATPs, especially the nation state ATPs, Guess what? SolarWinds was a nation state ATP. That was Cozy Bear. And I spent all of 2020 telling people, watch out for it. You are going to get hit. I was really unhappy to be proven right. But the point is, if you were watching what was going on with, the MITRE ATT&CK framework and thus, you can actually see that you could see the oncoming lights of the train, and everybody's going to get clobbered with nation state attacks, and we ain't seen nothing yet. So strategically, the very fact that you need to worry about nation state attacks that's the level we're talking about. Then there's the whole TTP tactics, techniques, and processes that are what is going on. Am I getting hammered by a bunch of IP addresses or URLs or really technical stuff? That's what most people focus on. It's good stuff, it's important stuff, but don't neglect the strategic stuff. Then there's the drill down technical stuff, and then finally there's the operational stuff. And my kind of big picture answer is you should be looking at all 4 levels and don't neglect the strategic.
Okay, so that's just baseline. We're talking about the actual collection of data. But our discussion today is going to be really focused around intelligence. Let me ask you, Chris, first. What is the common thing that we're just missing when we're trying to make that connection between data coming in and data? Data without intelligence is useless. Like collecting it, we all can kind of collect data. So what is the intelligence we're actually trying to muster from what's coming in?
And it's almost a double meaning, because we're talking about collecting intelligence, but the intelligence that's derived from that is the byproduct of what you're collecting.
Good point.
And well, this is it. It's your traditional double meaning. But really, we're looking for patterns. We're looking for context or correlations that we can build. And, it all starts whenever I consult on this and work with various customers and whatnot. It all goes back to what's relative to their business. We have, being an former IT auditor, we call them BAUs, or business as usual, the things that you actually must exist in order for your business to exist or continue to exist. And that's how we build intelligence around that threat intelligence, is aligning that with the BAUs. It's a simple answer to say, oh yeah, go ahead and do that. There's more involved in actually doing that. And a lot of the strategic moves that John mentioned earlier in the first answer to that question is extremely relevant, because we can use strategies to help prioritize what that intelligence will look like, or how we'll build that intelligence out of the threats and all of that data that we're pulling together to try to make some context to see what our posture is like in terms of the current threat landscape.
All right. Using Chris's words about the double meaning, I'm going to throw it at you, Jonna. What's the intelligence you're getting from the intelligence?
Well, that's actually a great question. And I'm going to do the classic analyst thing and twist it slightly, because we've got a discussion going on over here in the chat. And one of the things that we're missing about threat intelligence generally is the fact that so much of the information you need may be right out there in public. The example is the Capitol. The head of the Capitol Police was like, oh, we had no idea that we were going to get attacked. And it's like, well, you could have checked Parler, you could have checked Twitter, you could have checked Facebook, you could have checked LinkedIn. And, half this stuff was out there.
And the thing, time and time again, whenever we see any kind of attack, the Capitol is a perfect, physical example of it. But there was a digital thread that led up to it that after the fact, it's like, why didn't you see all this? So, and
Elliot and Ian really weighed in on this. It's because there's so much stuff that, you could be spending all day chasing sea shanties. Sorry, that's the latest thing on TikTok, and miss what's going on Twitter. That's actually, oh, let's go attack the Capitol. There's just such an enormous volume of data, and some of it's just people. So this, getting back to the intelligence is the really important thing, is to understand what is real and what is just people, making noise. And in fact, hackers are extremely good at exploiting exactly that and throwing an awful lot of flak and shrapnel and, general noise out there so that what they're actually doing is way over here.
So, and I'm sorry, Elliot referred to it as the fog of intel, meaning, and again, this we hear all the time. It's like, our SOC is overwhelmed. We spend a lot of time chasing things we don't know. And also, not only that, there's the issue of, okay, once we find something, the time it takes to investigate that one thing can take a while, and it could lead nowhere, kind of a thing. So I guess, where do we begin, Chris, of just cutting down the tasks? I don't want to say the noise, just the task. How do we cut it down to make our SOC not overwhelmed?
So that, one of the things that popped up on the chat was the idea around actionable intelligence, and that's used a lot. That's been used,
which is what we want to,
which is what
focus
we want
on as much here. Yeah,
exactly. And there's a lot of ways to, again, define what actionable actually means, but really it's a case of prioritization. And there's a number of different ways to measure prioritize or to prioritize. And work with your intelligence in order to make it relevant to you and actionable, so that you can then, the other A word, automate it, or automate the process of responding to that. And so really, again, for me, the quick way of doing that is whatever framework I'm using. That's another thing that we'll use, and I used exclusively in IT audit, was to be able to give me some kind of measure. One of the keys to getting measure is to take a risk-based approach in terms of prioritizing, and that risk-based approach could be anything. I mean, it could be aligning to a specific industry framework that's relative to your business, and that aligns well to your internal BAUs of your business, etc. So that's one of the first ways that I would normally take to start to strategically drill in on the intelligence, or drill down on all the intelligence that you're collecting, to find some way to prioritize what you have. And then the next step is to act upon it. And that's where you truly have that actionable intelligence, is when you have some kind of risk-based formula to help you prioritize what's important to you, to be able to make that decision in the SOC to say, is this actually important? If you have no measure of that, you're going to take a shot at it and see what happens.
All right. We have Elliot Lewis here, who is the CEO of Kiavi Data. And I know that Elliot, by the way, in your earlier days of being in security, spent a lot of time. I mean, you did some SOC work yourself, yes?
I've had to protect companies like Microsoft, Cisco, Dell, and Merrill Lynch. So
yes, you've dealt with this yourself.
What's it like to protect Merrill Lynch? I tell them, try protecting $1.7 trillion a day with a live link to the New York Stock Exchange. Not a problem. It's just right?
So, comment or question? What do you got?
Absolutely, because we were going through a lot of these things. We were going through all the different aspects. One of the things that people have to think about is the nature of intelligence operations has absolutely changed to a state of warfare. Mm-hmm. And half of the time when you're looking at all these things, trying to derive what all these systems are doing, what these things are doing after the fact, so on and so forth, with reactive, stale information. When I say stale, it can be literally within an hour or in a few minutes. They also know by saying these things like, we're going to be at the Capitol in under 10 minutes, it's actually a feint, because they're putting that out because they're going to go over here. What you need to do is tie your intelligence to the live entities and issues, data, resources, to say where are the ones you're interested in, and then get the fog and the screening out so your intel is actually actionable in the moment, and you can derive away from the fog. And when we are working with our stuff, as an example, our technology, not to make a plug, that's not what I'm doing here, but the point is, when we've made data ability to actually tell you, here's who has me, what they're doing under 3 seconds around the globe proactively, that's not the answer to all things, but if you center it around what's happening with the live data, now the rest of the intelligence, if it's not correlating to that, drop the screens. Focus on where the action is, because they already know to feint you and come from a flank or come from a side. The whole thing we saw with the SolarWinds hacks as an example, what people weren't thinking about with that is that, sure, SolarWinds is hacked. Yeah, we're having problems with it. What are we going to do with this? The thing, and they were dropping SolarWinds and turning it off because they were afraid of the hack that goes with that. In the meantime, the hackers knew this. They were already penetrated. They've already set their back doors. And while you're focusing on SolarWinds, they're coming in from the side doing extractions. Because this wasn't the intel you should have been looking at.
Well, and in the case of the Capitol, you know that there were pipe bombs that thankfully didn't go off at the RNC and the DNC at the time, and they were they believed they were designed to cause a distraction away from the capital.
Absolutely. This is standard warfare practice. When we work with the military, you never look at what's coming out in front of you because you know it's a distraction from the real attacks, right? Mm-hmm. Data is no different. System penetration is no different. And what we see a lot of is everybody's still relying on reactive post-data actions that they munged in the SOC because they weren't able to do it on live interaction and in focus. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
Which, Elliot, I just want to weigh in because, just using the example that we're playing with over in the chat session, for example, once you actually cross-linked all the parlor identities with people that were actually in the Capitol, now you've got something that's quite interesting and does a lot of that winnowing out the wheat, the chaff from the, the wheat from the chaff, and that's what you're talking about. I mean, if people can't understand what that means, that's a classic example of, okay, these guys are here now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just where they were at that moment and cross-correlating that event.
Right.
That event was a week ago, over a week ago. What were they planning before after,
the day
put a trajectory of proactive intel in place? This is not the end. It's the beginning, or it could be shut down, or it could get worse. The point is, if you're working on reactive, old, stale data, and stale data is literally these days and minutes, you're probably going to miss the side attack. And right now, everybody's focusing on the inauguration, which is fine. They should be. But we also know every state capital is also having plans.
Exactly.
So are you really distributing your pieces right? And I use this correlation only because this is a battle plan. This is a warfare plan. It's just data, right? Data is the new warfare. And we're just having a good analogy here based on politics, but it's a good example.
And that's why I talk about nation state attacks, because one of the things that people are slowly, or countries are coming to grips with is, oh, hell, it's a lot cheaper to hire a bunch of geeks and put them behind keyboards than it is to build a missile and a jet and a submarine to deliver these. And I can do just as much damage, and I can decide whether I want to take credit for it or not. So all of it, it's much more fine-tuned, it's cheaper, it's like everything else, and it's significantly more agile. So when you say data is, information is battle, is warfare, that's absolutely the case.
Absolutely. You have to use those techniques to go through the intel and people, and no one wins a war by figuring out what happened last week. It just doesn't work that way. So you got to shift your focus to proactive versus reactive. Not everything can be proactive, but if you have a proactive intel source, anchor your intelligence and your fog clearing around the proactive source and let the reactive information augment it. And it's a new way of thinking because we haven't had a lot of proactive sources.
This gets into a kind of a question that Eli Mignall just asked, and I'm going to actually throw this to you, Chris. Is the future of data intelligence still human? Can humans move quick enough to separate the real from the false in these huge volumes? And what I say actually is the need for some level of automation. Again, we don't think we're going to automate our way out of this problem, but what can be automated to react? And I think that's my big question. From the intelligence, what can be automated to react, and what are we doing when we react? Chris?
Yeah, so there's a couple levels to this answer, but in terms of automating this process, so we're talking about this art of distraction within threat intelligence, and I mean, if you look at the the ecosystem of an exploit, which we've been studying for an awfully long time now, and realizing the way it works very, this whole warfare concept is directly in line with the hacker ecosystem, the attack kill chain. There's so many different frameworks to measure that. But one of the ways to start automating that is to work against that distraction or realize that distraction and build that into the algorithms. So there's 1,000,001 solutions. I work for a company that does this kind of stuff, but not, again, just as was before, not to make a plug, but the idea is real risk prioritization amongst that data. Now, again, it's a simple thing to say that you need this. Well, how are you going to do that? Essentially, you want to get that second thing that we were talking about, that risk measure, built in to your prioritization automation so that you can work around that distraction. So that if you find elements of, let's say, reconnaissance happening around a specific type of exploit, you have enough awareness to realize that that could be actually a distraction, because that happens on the dark web, where you'll see things. Attackers will start up campaigns, and they're almost shell campaigns to just distract us, to think, oh my gosh, a threat is coming from here. And meanwhile, when you're looking over here, they're doing the magic and hitting you on the other from another perspective, using a different exploit that you didn't expect. So
I mean, again, let's get back to the title of good. What is it? What is the action we're taking here? And by the way, the art of distraction, I mean, that is an art in itself, as David Zenzian just said. So we know this is something that's always going to involve some level of humans, but what actions can we take here? And again, can be automated?
Well,
Johnny, you want to mind?
Yeah, I want to jump in because I've had a note to myself to weigh in on this. I think before you start talking about what actions should be taken, I think it's incredibly important to ask who is taking the actions. Mm-hmm. Because when you look, one of the big problems with threat intelligence in general is that the output of this information and the actions that need to be taken, some of it's the cybersecurity team, some of it's the IT team. Hey, go launch these patches. Some of it is, again, at a more strategic level. Hey, you need to go think about this, get us more information from a source that we may not have access to validate whether this is a higher level threat or not. So one of the things that's a big challenge is most tools do not take into consideration the fact that there are multiple different profiles of actors. IT people, security people, senior management, and a bunch more. Compliance, obviously, Chris, and legal, physical security, possibly. And the challenge is when you get to that whole issue of prioritization. There's prioritization within cybersecurity. This is a red alert. This is a orange alert. This is okay, but then you have to also compare with prioritization of everything else those people whose primary job is not cybersecurity have to deal with. So, for example, if you're an IT person and it's like, no, you need to drop everything and push out this patch now, you've got to have some way to communicate that and get that across. And so, I think to answer your question, David, where one of the big helps with automation and to a certain extent machine learning and AI is actually automating a lot of this, putting some RPA in place so that you're essentially letting people know when flagging something that really should bubble to the top of their priorities when their priorities are not necessarily cybersecurity, as well as helping the cybersecurity analysts and their teams respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good, Chris, what were you going to
add? I mean, that's a great point. And that brings up, when I used to do audits, I did them in reverse, and people thought, what are you doing this for? And the reason, and to John's point, I would begin with the security awareness program. That was the first thing that I would measure before I would start actually looking at what kind of prioritizations they could put into their risk measures. When we were doing pre-compliance data gathering, things like this, I didn't want to start there. I wanted to see how well that they were going to be able to execute this and then push that across the whole company. Right, so that you can make the most robust, incredible prioritization program and automation program on the earth. But if no one knows what to do with that, if the end users and stakeholders have no clue how to execute that, implement that, or even use it, well, then it's going to fail. So I think that this is a point around there in terms of whatever automation you do build, you're going to have to get buy-in and make sure that people understand, both IT and non-IT users, both security and non-security users, compliance, everyone else understands exactly how that is being implemented and whether something is high priority or not, so that they can at least have a better reality on how they would see something as being a high priority, compelling event or whatnot.
Okay. And what Scott just said in the chat really builds on what you just said, Chris. So,
all right, I just want to remind people that we have just 7 minutes of you to vote for your favorite best bad ideas. So please get those best bad ideas in as quickly as possible. And also I've got the 2 showdowns for our What's Worse comparison. So we'll have that coming up soon. But please get your votes in, and we'll be playing the Department of Yes in just a few minutes. Also, if you've not clicked the link at the bottom of the screen to register for next week's video chat, hacking high-profile accounts, which, by the way, we have the CISO for TikTok will be joining us. That's Roland Cloutier. He will be joining us for that. So please click on that and register for that video chat. And do stick around at the end when we have our meetup, which is a ton of fun. If you've never done it, it's a lot of fun. So do not miss out on that. All right. Let's get to questions that are coming on in. Let's get on this. And also you can vote for your favorite questions too. What about smaller organizations here? The one that don't even have a SOC. There are a lot of companies don't even have security person one that work. Many of them use managed services. Where to go here? Johnny, you're where do they start? Because it just seems like they got zero bandwidth to handle anything.
Yeah, and one of the things we found that was really interesting when we did our cybersecurity research, we look at something we call the mean total time to contain, which I'll bore you with at some later date. But it's literally how quickly you go from this might be a threat, this might be an attack, to oh crap, it was, and we just contained it. It's not remediate because you haven't fixed everything that's led up to it. Anyway, what we found was, no surprise, having a SOC strongly correlates with having lower MTTC. But whether you should outsource the SOC or build it yourself, there's a kind of a clear cutoff point at about 2,500 employees. So if you're a smaller organization, 2,500 or less, you should have a SOC, but you should be getting a managed service that provides SOC services and provides not just the managed service, but actually will give you threat hunting and threat intelligence as part of the solution. And by the way, when I say threat intelligence, I don't mean they're feeding you the stuff. I mean, they're doing what we talked about earlier and treating you as though you're a stakeholder and saying, we will elevate our findings to you when they are critical enough that you, the client, need to care, understanding that you, the client, may not be the cybersecurity specialist.
By the way, Ian makes a good point, and I lit up too. 2,500 is not a small group. We're talking much smaller than that.
It's true. I do understand that. But basically, it does go all the way down to 0, the opposite of going all the way up to 11. Sorry, for you Spinal Tap fans. But anyone small should be considering working with a SOC
It seems
provider.
like managed service seems to be kind of the way to go. Chris, your advice for smaller organizations that just do not have a SOC?
Yeah, I totally agree with that in terms of reaching out managed services. One of the other things that I've, in working with SMBs, companies of different sizes and smaller, is to look towards those MSSPs that actually have some kind of industry-specific specialization. And I'm coming at this from a sort of compliance regulatory or framework perspective. Is, if you're a retailer or you're a small retailer, you want to implement security across your enterprise, it's probably good to go to somebody who knows a little bit about retail. But it has a specialization in that. And there's 1,000,001 different MSSPs that you can go and work with and such. But one of the deciding factors that might help accelerate the implementation of your external SOC would be to make sure that they have some kind of vertical specialization, right?
So, that gets to my question. Could you just give me any example here? I'm very intrigued to know that how do attacks come in differently depending on the vertical? And let's just use a really basic one, retail versus not retail. That's got to be a pretty obvious one. What are the kinds of attacks you're seeing in that respect?
Well, you do see a lot of infrastructure attacks with retail. There's still POS centric activity. We're still monitoring that. Us at Insights, this is what we do. We still monitor that actively today because, again, it's not in the forefront of the news. Although the entire e-commerce industry expanded by 500% in terms of payments over the last year. So it's a very lucrative market. But again, it's not the really cool stuff to look at right now in the industry because there's all these other distractions that we're focusing on. So there's a lot of specialization that can be had by any particular company that's working with in those various sectors. So with retail, you're going to again, there's specific infrastructure type attacks and such that are still happening that you're going to want to focus on, and you're going to want anyone helping you to understand how that works. You might want to make sure that they know something about the payment card industry data security standard if you're a retailer, because those are the types of threats and threat patterns that industry body focuses on and is an expert in. So again, all those come together to making a more robust threat program or SOC for a retailer, for example, as opposed to a manufacturer.
All right, we just got a call came in.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right, you know how this game is played. As you know, security teams are often referred to as the Department of No because they reject good ideas. What I am asking you to do is say yes to really bad ideas. And we had the poll came in, and by the way, the most voted one hits me personally at home because my mother has a knitting circle. She is an active knitter. My mother does actually have a knitting circle. In fact, I have referred this woman that she sees, who's kind of like the all-knowing knitting person. I've referred to her as a knitting Yoda because she's so savvy on knitting. Anyways, they get together now on Zoom to have their knitting circles and discuss complex knitting projects, if you will. And here it is. I'm going to throw this to you, Jonna, for the Department of Yes. You have to agree to this. Do not be facetious. Explain why this is a good idea. Get your threat intelligence from my mother's knitting circle. Why do you want to do that?
Because you don't know whether your mother's knitting circle may also include the former head of the CIA cybersecurity, who in fact does knit and does actually support some of the aerospace companies and is quite an impressive woman. So not knowing that, I would say if you, unless you know who's actually in your knitting circle, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad idea. So yes, do that.
Wow. Savviness pulled it out. All right. Chris, I'm going to want to see you one up that one. Why do you want to get your threat intelligence from my mother's knitting circle?
Well, essentially, you mentioned that she is the Yoda of knitting circles. And
she knows a lot about knitting. Let me just start with that.
Well,
she knows a lot about knitting.
They know a lot about a lot of other things. And the foremost, I mean, having a consultant to a council such as that can only answer. I mean, obviously, she'd be able to just feel if there's a problem with your security program. So, she would be able to reach out to different parts of the universe and understand exactly what the answer is to what type of threat intelligence you should be feeling. So she's basically going to tell you to just feel what intelligence is the right type of intelligence. So as a Jedi master of knitting circles, I mean, come on, you can't go wrong. They're going to use the Force, and you're going to be getting the right type of intelligence.
All right, you were reaching, Chris, but I'm going to give it to you. Bless your heart. All right, we got one more here we're going to do. One of these is going to be used in the What's Worse, which you're going to play right afterwards. All right, I'm going to throw this one to you first, Chris. Collect, and this is a tough one. I'm going to be impressed if you can pull this off. Collect all data and then sell it on the dark web. Why are we doing this?
Well, path of least resistance. Why wouldn't you do that? This is, it's a lucrative market, and I think we should all just, fold in and say accept defeat and just go and go where the money is. Right? You're going to follow the money. So show me the money. I'm just going to sell it on the dark web. What the heck? I'm
going to give you 2 on this. I'm going to give you because really this is plan B is the way I see it. That if your business doesn't work, you can always generate revenue from the dark web, which again, now you're doing illegal behavior. But Jonna, why do we want to collect all data and sell it on the dark web?
Oh, because basically you're saying to everybody, you pose it as a challenge, gamify it, and say, see if you can hack me, and use it instead of paying for pen testing.
There you go. And actually, let's give you that one right there. All right. Very good. All right, let's move on. We're going to move on now. I'm sorry, there's one more game we want to play right after that.
Sorry, can you please look at what David said? I like it.
What did David? Selling data on the dark web enables the security team to become a profit center. Yeah, well, that's what I said. Exactly what I said, Dave. Yes. Well, but he put it far more cogently than I did. Exactly. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, now we have another game.
It's time to play What's Worse?
All right. I am going to tell you that Eli Migdal, who is a past winner, has thrown us these 2 bad ideas. and not ones that I mentioned before. But again, we're playing what's worse here. So get out of your head the Department of Yes. You actually don't want either of these, but you want to tell me which one would be more damaging to you. So I'll start with you, Jonah. Should the two ones we're putting face to face, should you feed your InfoSec Twitter or feed InfoSec Twitter into your SIM? So I guess take everything Twitter and SIM, which this doesn't actually sound too bad to me. Or get your threat intelligence from Fox News. All threats are Democratic Party, or CNN. Everything's a threat. So get all your threat intelligence from Fox News or CNN, which I'm going to say, let's say, and CNN. Get all your threat intelligence from Fox News and CNN, or feed your InfoSec Twitter into your SIM. Which one is worse of the two?
Oh, clearly the Fox CNN one, because neither of them have any idea what they're saying. But actually the InfoSec, that was John Prokop's, and I really liked it because actually you could probably find some interesting stuff from that.
Yeah, I think
it's not totally awful.
I don't think actually it's a bad idea at all.
Right.
In fact,
I don't think it's a bad idea either. I was going to say that, but the tide swept away. But the Fox CNN is absolutely categorically a bad idea. So,
Chris, agree or disagree here?
I agree.
Okay, and why?
I agree. Well, because it's you're basically you're getting both ends of the spectrum. I mean, you want to look far and wide, right? So you're getting both ends of the spectrum there. They couldn't be farther diametrically opposed. So you're getting a good breadth of data.
Good breadth of data in terms of Twitter, or again, we're not playing the Department of Yes. We're playing what's worse. So which one is worse here?
The CNN and Fox News.
Yeah, because you diametrically opposed. Because anyway, all right, we're moving on. All right, now let's move on to our additional questions. We have more questions coming in. By the way, not a lot, so please throw in some questions. Give them to us. The great chat in the chat room, some good advice, and again, kudos to David Peach on turning security into a profit center, which I like it, even though, again, it would be criminal. So there is being a profit center, and it is making profit money illegally. So how can we make it more
not necessarily
legally?
Not necessarily, David. You can actually basically turn it out and say, hey, now we've got the world's best most hardened solution, so we can offer this as our own way to go harden everybody else. So
which, by the way, no. So now, if you're looking at it that way, this is something that all security professionals have been talking about and saying, hey, if everyone in the dark web is sharing data, why aren't us, the good guys, sharing data? And again, there's a lot of companies that are going out of their way to try to get others to collect data because, by the way, as we're seeing, one organization's threat intelligence does not match the next. And so we could all share it and see some value from this. I'm throwing this to you, Chris. What level of sharing are we getting, and how desperately needed is it or not?
Well, the level of sharing still isn't up to where it should be. There's a lot of intelligence sharing communities that have spread it up over the last 10 years or so, but it's not even close because the level of sharing I see going on the dark web is, frankly, it's impressive. I mean, there's support centers. There's
it's run just no different than a business.
I've seen options behind the curtains where you could basically hit a little chat and have a support person on helping you understand how to create the various exploits or how you're going to purchase that exploit, etc. It's pretty amazing how sophisticated it is. So level of information sharing on the other side of the fence, I don't think it's still at the point where it should be.
I want to ask this next question that came in, though, from Ash Woodhall, who asks, and I think this is a good one. I'm going to throw this to you, Jonah, first, but I definitely want your answer as well, Chris. If you could only monitor 3 things to help detect security incidents, what would they be? 3 feeds, if you will. What are the 3 feeds you're going to be detecting? Good question, Ash.
That's a good one. I'd want to know what was going on the endpoints. I'd actually want to understand, all joking aside, I'd want to understand what was going on in collaboration and social networking tools, because that's usually a blind spot. Nobody knows what's going on, to the degree to which.
So you want the endpoints and the chatter. The social
Yeah,
chatter.
the endpoints and the chatter, and I'm sort of wrestling with number 3. I can only do 3. Let's see. I'll cheat. I'll say I want to see what's going on in my cloud workloads.
Okay. No, and that's part of the endpoints
It's kind
too,
of
as well.
it's not an endpoint, but it's kind of cheating because it's like saying let's see what's going on in the entire data center. But
Well,
we'll
if
take
it
yeah,
visibility in
okay,
our
fine,
own cloud.
you're
All right.
right. Yeah,
Chris,
but David, not just IM. There's so much more.
email, IM. All right. Well, people are throwing their 3 out there. I like this. All right. And feel free. Instacart. Number 1, Instacart. I like that, Elliot. A friend of mine who was driving for Instacart told me that he gets much bigger tips when he was picking up alcohol for people, which I thought was interesting. Chris, so three feeds you can monitor. What are they?
So I would do endpoints as well, since that's been a bread and butter for mine for a long time. But then the 2 others that I would actually throw in are VIP information, basically your CXOs and VIPs and such for impersonation attempts and everything else.
That's a good. That teases, by the way, next week's video chat. Make sure you're there as well. Click on the link below. Go ahead.
For you. I was trying.
Thank you.
That was making up for my bad answer earlier. The third one I would do would be PII. So data that contains personally identified information. So that's sensitive, what you could call critical data about consumers, about your data that you're using in your business. So that's a third feed I would definitely include.
That's actually really good. So actually, then now let me do the follow up to the question. By the way, Eli asked almost an identical question as well to just this as well. But following up, okay, from those feeds like the endpoints, like PII, like chatter, whatever it is. Give me just an example, and this could be from your research, Jonna, and Chris, this can be from customers as well. What have people been able to actually do off of this information? I see this, I can now do that. Chris, I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, they've been able to remediate it. So in many of the cases,
just give me, walk me through. I'm an idiot here.
Yeah,
walk me through.
Sure. So
I'm sorry. Are you saying sure you're an idiot? Go ahead.
Well, I'm just agreeing with everything because that's just what I do. But
we're the Department of Yes, man.
Exactly. I'm just following the rules here. That's it. So essentially, I'll walk you through a scenario. You find an illicit database of let's say VIP credentials. All right, your CXOs out there, illicit database on a illicit DNS server and whatnot. There's basically, you can take action on that at this point. So you can go and do a takedown of those servers to essentially, hopefully, eliminate the problem, right? Reclaim or take down that particular presence once you've found that and located that. So if you're looking for patterns of VIPs or databases or patterns of, let's say, credit card data, now I'm going all over the place with data, but whatever that actually is, then you could take remediation steps like perform a takedown, or you can purchase some of it, or you can make it non-relevant. With credit cards, you could just cancel all of those various accounts and whatnot and switch them over. So I know that's multiple examples, but that's a scenario.
But you're talking about the different scenarios that could play out. That's a good point. All right, John, the same question to you. Okay, any one of these feeds you're taking, what is it you're seeing and how are you dealing with it? And again, just give me an example. And
sure.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris, I'm going to build on what Chris said because basically take action is the only right answer here. Ideally, automatedly take action so you're doing it in computer time and not human time. But for example, and I'm going to drag out a buzzword, don't shoot me, guys. If you look at Zero Trust as deployed at the endpoint, the first thing you're going to see is, oh, hang on, here is a microservice executing that actually oughtn't to be executing or does not have explicit permission to be accessing this other microservice, so I'm not going to let it. And so before anything can start, you've essentially got, potentially you've got formal microservice authorization in place, or potentially you're just doing behavioral threat analytics and going, hang on, that service is behaving in a way that it's not supposed to. So I'm just not going to let it until it's explicitly authorized.
Good question just came in from Matthew Bibby, who is also a CISO, I know. How do you, and I like this, I'll throw this to you, Chris. How do you determine what providers, ISACs, et cetera, should provide intelligence to your organization? So Like, I mean, this is, I mean, I asked you for your top 3 feeds before, but just like, we could ask for everybody, or we get, you know, what are we doing? We're making API requests. We're loading things into our SIM. I mean, what is it we're choosing to bring in, not bring in? And also, is this a thing where you say, all right, let's bring it all in, and over time, we're going to figure out what's useless and we're going to cut it out? I mean, how does it play itself out?
Well, you know, I mean, more is always better as long as you can do something with it and make it actionable, like we were talking about at the beginning.
Well, hold on. Is more? Hold on. I'm gonna stop you on that. Is more always better? Is it?
Well, not necessarily. Now, see, the thing is, it's not a case of just turning it on and taking it all in, because I mean, you're not going to do anything with that, because you're going to be overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you need a way to orchestrate that data that you're pulling in. But what I've recommended, and I'm coming at this from I happen to work for an intelligence vendor. You know, most of my customers and whatnot, I want them to have multiple feeds of intelligence that they're bringing in. And the thing I focus on is, you know, even though we might get in a competitive situation where they're saying, well, I'm collecting your intelligence and then this other intelligence that is your competitor. But the thing that we look at is to say, well, yes, but I mean, combine that with some kind of industry specific specialization. So getting back to, you know, working with MSPs and such, you know, if you're a retailer, you're going to probably want to work with the retail ISAC and share intelligence with that community, because that's part of your community. Then hence what they're focusing on is intelligence that is relevant to the retail industry. So you can start to narrow down or focus in on your data a little bit more by working across, let's say, verticals from that perspective. But I think multiple intelligence feeds is still a good thing, because I mean, you want to make sure that you're getting the whole picture, and that whatever
I understand, but like, I mean, is there? You know, and I don't know how to answer this right, but you could bring in feeds and you could look at it for a month and it's telling you nothing. You could shut it off. Maybe it would tell you something next month. I don't know. I mean, I've never worked in a SOC. I have no idea. I'm just kind of more asking. So, and again, does more data, I mean, does it become more costly to, you know, consume all this? Suck everything into my SIM? Like, and how long am I holding on to it? Like, this is actually the question that came up with Steve Zalewski, who I'm working with on Defense in Depth, and he wants to know, like, do I hold it for 90 days? Do I hold it for 6 months? Do I hold it for a year? Do I hold it forever? Like, what am I, how valuable does this become later on? You know, to Elliot's point later, it's like, you don't deal with today's threat on a month-old data, or maybe you do. I don't know. What, Jonna?
You know, I've been thinking about this as you guys have been talking, and I guess two things kind of came up. First, I have to agree with Chris 100% that you need this vertical specific component. And the second thing is, I don't think you should be allowing a feed in. You know, get back to your question, David, like how many is too many, is, you know, is more always better, unless you have a very clear understanding of the type of data you're getting and what actions you will take. And by the way, who you is. So what actions each person in your organization would take based on certain findings from that data. And if you can't clearly, you know, see a strong connection, you know, I want to say kind of to the opposite of the kill chain, but looking at like, okay, what would we be doing at each step of the chain? Then you probably don't need that feed, or more accurately, you don't have the resources to correctly process that feed in the way that would make it valuable to you.
Interesting question that came in, and this is relevant to what we're talking about right now. From Gabriel D. I'm going to assume that's Gabriel Doncel. I hope I'm getting that right. Why are there so many ISACs? And by the way, for those of you who don't know what ISAC stands for, Information Sharing and Analysis Center. You know, why are there so many different ISACs? REN, what does REN stand? Finance and Health, right? Is that retail? REN? I don't know what it is. Isn't that counterproductive? I wouldn't think so, because industry-specific threat intel is different. Yes, Chris? I mean, I want to know what other retail outlets or other health or other finance are dealing with. That's far more valuable to me than just everybody's stuff. Yes, I would assume.
It totally is, right? Because if you look at a retail ISAC, or you compare that to a financial ISAC, FS ISAC and such, they're looking at different threat patterns. They're looking at different information. They're you know, the retail ISAC they might be looking at POS attacks. Now, would you be looking at that if you're a manufacturer? Probably not, unless it has some kind of correlation or base pattern similar to how that threat is happening. So, again, it gets back to that industry specialization in terms of how valuable is that threat intelligence going to be to you, and how easily is it that you can plug it into your framework. And I mentioned frameworks earlier, but this is all part of that equation. If you're a bank and you're applying the ffiec, and I'm not going to say all what the acronym is and spell it out, but their cyber awareness tool, for example, you're looking for very specific intelligence to be able to plug into that formula and then get your risk measures, as opposed to if you're a retailer and you're aligning with the PCI DSS and you're trying to satisfy those controls, you're looking for different intelligence. So you're going to want to work with the, let's say, a retail type of ISAC.
All right, just I want to remind everybody that we have just 10 minutes left. I know we have a big group that's still currently on. I want all of you who are still on to join us for a meetup that's going to be starting in exactly 10 minutes when this whole darn thing ends. So stick around. The link at the bottom is going to change. But until then, if you have not clicked that link to register for next week's video chat, which is relevant to what we're discussing here as well, please do that as well. All right. More questions that came in. I'm sorry. I want to go to that just came in. This one came in a little while ago from Ian Pointer, and I'll start with you because you Chris. I'm sorry. I'm going to start again with Chris here on this one because I know that Insights deals with automation. In the context of automation, are our expectations of AI too low, too high, or just right? And that's a question from Ian Pointer. What do you think, Chris?
I think our expectations are a little too high yet, because I've seen far too many solutions and also industry players push the AI button and say that that's going to solve my problem and automate everything for me. It's just, I think we're still at a state where it's a little bit too high, the expectations.
I think also, don't you think it's also the way AI has been sold to a lot of us? And then, Alan Alford actually posted about this, like the big win of AI was you were literally going to be able to reduce staff force. You're going to implement all this. And who has reduced staff force because they implemented a tool that got AI? I honestly, I don't know if one company has done that for a single employee. Like I've yet to hear that story actually happen. I've heard it sold plenty of times, but I've yet to hear the story told. Where do you stand, Jonna, on just where AI has been sold, what we are expecting from it, and what we're physically capable of doing it with regards to responding?
So I'm going to say, actually, we're not expecting enough from AI at the moment, and I know that's not a popular view. But let me take 5 steps back and say, look, I'm not going to reveal how old I am, but AI was the buzzword when I was in graduate school. And fun story on the side, my husband at the time was also in grad school and had an AI project to develop. And he tried to develop an AI that would tell him what his cat meant when it meowed. And it was actually almost impossible to do using an expert system, which was then state of the art. So basically, we've been working on AI a really, really, really long time. And periodically, people leap out of the woodworks and say, oh, it's gonna take over everything and change everything. So yeah, there's the sense that it's oversold. But I think the real magic of AI is it gives you not the answers to questions, but the questions to ask. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, people haven't gotten their heads around because we've all grown up in this mindset that technology is all about getting us better, faster answers to the questions we dream up. And that we haven't stopped and said, hey, are we asking the right questions? And should the AI be coming up with some of the questions to ask? Mm-hmm. And then you've got things like generative adversarial networks that do that. And I don't think we as NI, natural intelligence, have figured out how to use AI properly to get the real benefit out of it.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Oh, yeah. How much time we got left? Oh, just a couple of minutes. All right. Let me ask one more super quick question. If we've got one, the one we asked Eli, we answered that question already, Eli. All right. You know what? We're going to roll into just some closing comments right now. Let me give you everyone just a last minute or two to click on the link below if you've not clicked on it yet, to click on that to register for next week's video chat. Again, we do this every Friday, so please join our video chats every Friday. And also, you can just follow us on Crowdcast. You get alerted when we go live, but it's every Friday. By the way, we're introducing a new show. We've soft launched. Some of us have discovered it, and you can discover it as well. That happens on Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. More about that later. But just do me a favor, Andrew, in about 2 minutes, change that link to our icebreaker link. All right, now is essentially 5 minutes left in our video chat. I'm going to ask the two of you to sum everything up for us, and I will ask you, Jonna, first, your general advice about this issue of data intelligence, of where we are and what you suggest others do in terms of getting some action on this, and just sort of a summation of what we've discussed.
I'm not quite going to sum everything, but I'm going to highlight, if there's one takeaway one takeaway that I wish everyone would take is, everyone wants data intelligence to be actionable. Please ask yourselves the question, who is taking the action? And make sure that you have mapped out how the people that are taking the action are getting the information and getting it, as Chris said, properly prioritized so as to take that action, because that's the step that's missing in most of the clients we work with. We work with a lot of enterprise CISOs, and that's what they're missing.
That gets into the whole issue of process, which I hear this problem again and again. There are so many companies out there selling tools, but they're not selling process. Actually, you know what? Hold tight for your answer. I'm going to just do a quick summary here. I should just share my screen for a second. I'm going to go to you, Chris, in just a moment. As I mentioned here, I want everyone to just stick around for the icebreaker that's going to happen in a moment. But I do also want to thank our sponsor, Insights, for sponsoring this episode. That's who Chris is with. Thank you so much for sponsoring. And related to that, if you want to sponsor a video chat, in fact, I've got one opening coming up very, very soon that I need to get sold within like the next week or so. So if you would like that one opening that I have, please contact me at david@cisoseries.com. All right. Now, Chris, thank you for your patience right there. You've got just a couple of minutes. Last piece of advice, and also any kind of pitch, anything you would like people to know about Insights, to join us. And oh, by the way, I just noticed the link at the bottom change. Everybody can click on that now, have that open in the window, get that ready for when we actually all roll over to the video chat. So feel free to click on that now. All right, Chris, go ahead.
Well, yeah, in terms of the pitch, just to mention, a lot of what we've been talking about. So what Insights does is democratizes threat intelligence. That's what we've been talking about today. So this is not I've never been a fan, and I wouldn't even be with Insights if I was a fan of the just click this button. This is going to take care of all your problems for you. So that's never been the theme. And everything we talked about today is very much in that vein of essentially, contextualizing and bringing together industry-related threat intelligence to make some sense and to give people a chance to make a decision and make a smart decision without just turning it all on and just going for broke. And that relates to what I would leave as a takeaway is that in all businesses, when they're looking at this problem, is to try to understand what their business is. Because a lot of companies will just go head first into this and say, I just need this, and I need to find that panic button that I can hit, and that's going to fix all my problems for me and give me the right intelligence and tell me what to do and answer my questions. But I would say if you step back, and being a former auditor, if you step back and you look at your business process, get back to those BAUs, business as usual. What does your business actually need? Why do you even need this data in the first place, et cetera, et cetera? Once you answer those questions, it's a lot easier to decide what paths to take when it comes to intelligence, because things will seem more relevant to you because you'll understand why the heck your business needs that in the first place. And if we don't do that, then again, you're going to be making decisions based off of not a lot of data, just sort of, from the hip, and try to avoid that.
Good advice. All right, we're ready to wrap this sucker up. I want to thank my two guests, Jonathan Johnson, who is the CEO of Nemertes Research, or do you just go by Nemertes?
Nemertes.
Nemertes. I'm sorry. Did I pronounce it wrong?
That's fine.
Nemertes. No, I want to get it right. Nemertes. I'm sorry. And Chris Strand, Chief Compliance Officer over at Insights. Thank you again for sponsoring. We greatly appreciate it. Now, everybody, I want you to click the link at the bottom. Join us for the one-on-one meetups. Again, if you've never done it, it's a ton of fun. Please join us. Now, Andrew, you can take us out.